Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRC Plus, WRC Now, everywhere that you watch our shows here at WRCNow.com. Thanks so much for stopping by. Another week is here. Last week, we talked a lot about the state of Virginia and Virginia Tech football. We talked about, how big of a game it was on Friday night coming up for UVA. How awesome would it be if they could pull off an upset over the Seminoles? And sure enough, that's exactly what they do in double overtime, 46-38. And I thought, what better person to bring in to talk about the dramatics in Charlottesville than Greg Madia of the Daily Progress in Charlottesville. Thanks so much for stopping by. Obviously, you were at the game. You've been covering UVA here now for some time. That had to have been the most dramatic and most exciting win that you've covered in Charlottesville, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, best game that I've seen since I've been on the beat. I got here in Charlottesville in 21, so I've been here throughout Tony Elliott's tenure, and undoubtedly the best, most impressive win of his time at UVA as its head coach. I just think the way they were able to withstand and outlast and kind of never give in, right? Florida State had that 21-point second quarter where it looked like things were going to flip and momentum was going to shift in a way that Virginia couldn't rebound from. Virginia ended up scoring before halftime to tie the game. Then, of course, late, right, Florida State goes down the field, ties the game to force overtime, and the two teams go back and forth in overtime before Virginia eventually wins it. Really just impressive determination from the Cavaliers, and obviously the noticeable upgrade that we talked about back in the summer, Nolan, right? The depth and the talent and the better roster shining through for the Cavaliers last Friday.
Yeah, we talked about this summer, the big excitement point for any team was when you bring in a new quarterback, and Chandler Morris, I think, played lights out. He threw 3 interceptions in the game, which I think is pretty easy to forget about. Finished 26 for 35, 229 yards, threw for 2 scores, rushed for another 3. I mean, I think you got to forgive him for the 3 picks. I mean, the Cavalier offense was able to move the ball and answer, it seemed like, every time they needed to.
Yeah, he's been tremendous, Nolan. He's combined for 10 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, his skills were just on display from start to finish against Florida State. What he could do, not only not only throwing the football, but running it too. It seemed like every time he took off in the red zone, he was bound. He was bound to dive past the goal line for a touchdown. He's really got a good knack and a good feel for, all right, none of the receivers are open at this moment. It's time to get going, time to get moving. Otherwise, that pocket that is going to start to collapse. So I think he's got a good sense of it, and you would expect that to be the case. His 6th year in college football has been around from Oklahoma to TCU to North Texas and now to UVA. You'd expect him to have some of those traits, and I just think the way he's distributing the ball in the offense too, he's getting different receivers involved from week to week, whether it's Trell Harris or Jamal Edgerrin on the outside, Cam Ross in the slot, or even the tight ends, right? Virginia tight end has caught a touchdown in each of the last 4 games. So there are some different weapons that opposing defenses have to account for, and Morris is making sure that they cover up everybody. Otherwise, they're going to be in some serious trouble.
How about we tip our hats to the atmosphere at Scott Stadium? It's been a while. I mean, probably that 2019 season, the last time that it's had that much electricity. And last year they kind of got off to a really good start. It was kind of similar to this season. I can't remember if it was Louisville that came to town, but it was like the team's 3-1 and nobody's here. Like, what's going on? And I think there was a lot of fans. I know there was some discourse online about, we got to pack Scott Stadium. We got to make this place an atmosphere. And I think there was some skeptics out there that didn't think that, the UVA faithful would respond to that. And judging by what it looked like on television, obviously we had our high school football show, so we weren't able to be there. But I mean, the place looked energetic, to say the least.
It was a party at Scott Stadium, right? And it helped too. Virginia gets out to that 14-0 lead. The fans are feeling like they have a shot. And with that offense, it's a fun product to watch.
Yeah.
Like with Morris and all those different receivers and running backs who can make a big play on any given opportunity. So I think the way the game built too, like you could sense from the very beginning, right, when Virginia had that 2 touchdown lead out of the gate, that they had a chance, right? That they were not, outmanned like they had been in the past recent seasons against teams in the top 10 or bound for the college football playoff. Like I think about that stretch they went through a season ago where
Yep.
it was Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU in the back half of the season, and you just looked at the talent and you're like, those teams are just better.
Yeah.
Virginia does not have a good shot to win those games. Whereas in this one, Virginia's offensive line held up. They drove Florida State off the football, and that to me, the way Virginia's playing on its offensive and defensive lines the last couple of
Yep.
weeks is really what's standing out, and also allowing Chandler Morris to shine and those receivers and different options to shine the O line because Florida State went into the game averaging like 78 rushing yards allowed per game. Virginia ended up rushing for 211 and 4 touchdowns. FSU hadn't given up a rushing touchdown until UVA found found the end zone 4 times on the ground. And I just think the way it looked, like you could just sense it that Virginia had a chance, and that kept the fans engaged, kept the fans excited. Even in overtime after FSU scored, there was no hanging their heads or leaving the building early for UVA fans. They stuck around and they were rewarded for it. Got to storm the field, the student section. The student section was fantastic.
Yeah.
It looked great on TV, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean they
And,
were on the field before. I think they even called it a touchback. I
you
still
know,
don't
it's,
know if it
it's
was incomplete or an interception. The way
It's
they threw.
wild. I was talking to Pravard, who had the interception after the game, Nolan, and I was like, "How did you get out of there?" Just simply as the one who caught the touchdown. The fans are feet away from him. He's like, "I didn't even realize how close they were because he's so concentrated on the game."
Yeah.
But then he's like, "At that point, I just got down and made sure I was going to be able to breathe." He's like, "That was it." So I thought that was pretty crazy for Pravard, and that's a great story too. Right, he played at FCS Morgan State last year. Was a good player, but certainly didn't play in any atmosphere like the one on Friday against a team like that. So neat story for him to be in the middle of it.
Yeah, it was a spectacle to say the least on television. Hey, you brought up, last year they kind of got into that gauntlet. Not to mention, I think they played Pittsburgh when they were 6-0 to start the year, ranked in the top
Yeah.
15, I think last year. And obviously Pittsburgh, I think, finished the year 6-6 after starting 6-0. But this year, you look at their schedule, and I think obviously the matchup on the road to Louisville this week is incredibly tough. And let's not look ahead, but Washington State, UNC, who's really struggled, Cal that lost to San Diego State, Wake Forest, Duke, a struggling Virginia Tech team. I mean, it's hard to not look ahead and get excited, if you're a Cavalier fan.
They're in the thick of this ACC race, undoubtedly. What they've done to start their way in ACC play with the win, with the win against Stanford, and then obviously Friday night the double overtime thriller against Florida State. They're in it, and why not? Right, with that offense, they got to feel like they can have a shot to outscore and win a shootout if they have to, and the defense gets enough stops where they can win some tough games. But the schedule ahead, like you said. Saturday could be tricky, right? Going to Louisville. That's a team Virginia has had memorable close losses to each of the last 2 years. UVA led in the fourth quarter of both of those games. So it's one I know the older returning players on UVA's roster have circled for sure. But they know they're going to get the best from the Cardinals because if there's a team that's probably not going to overlook UVA, it's likely Louisville, knowing
Yep.
how tight those games have been the last couple of years. And then as you get into, late October and into November, the game that probably stands out as the toughest is Duke. They absolutely drilled Syracuse the other day. I think it was 38-3.
Yep.
They've got good defensive players. It seems like the quarterback Mensa's getting more comfortable, a good O-line, freshman running back that had a really good game against the Orange. That one could be tough down in Durham. I, I I think North Carolina not very good. The trip to Cal, you got to handle a cross country trip.
I think that's going to be tough too, because I think
Yeah,
they're better than that loss to San Diego State for sure.
yeah, right. And their freshman quarterback has looked really really good at times. But still, in this era of college football, if you want to be good, you got to go win those cross country games. Everybody's got them right all across the Power Four football has got those long flight games where you gotta go win in a place you're unfamiliar with. So I think if you can handle those three, Saturday most important first. But Virginia should be in the mix for an ACC title, a spot in the ACC title game, along with. I mean, I would think just to run through it off the top of my head, like Miami's going to be in the mix. I think
Yep.
Florida State is still going to be in the mix. And then I don't think you can write off SMU just yet. And I
I
don't know,
think
maybe
at end of the
Duke.
year, I could see that Duke game being a big game
Yeah. Oh
if both
yeah,
teams win the games that they'll be favored in.
for sure. I think the way the league's gone, no one would have predicted it, but Virginia should feel it has as good a shot as any to get to
Yep.
Charlotte.
Georgia Tech too, another team that
Yes,
is
of
right there
course.
in the thick of things. But as you mentioned, the matchup on this Saturday at Louisville, an underrated fan base, I think, when it comes to college football. I mean, they bleed for the Cardinals, and it's a great atmosphere. It's kind of forgotten back, but I mean, that stadium's incredible. They have great fan support. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with that because they haven't been in a big conference for a long time. But with that being said, what was kind of the conversations to this week on grounds? What has Tony Elliott said? What did the coordinators kind of say about the matchup this upcoming Saturday? And did it feel any different at those press conferences this week with what was accomplished on Friday?
I think there are a couple of questions about how does it feel to be the ranked team going to somebody else's building, right?
Yeah.
So that's a different role Virginia is going to have to handle this week, Nolan. I think, and I know we've kind of touched on it at times, and how they do have some good veteran leadership. That's going to be ultra important in the build up to this game, right? Chandler Morris and Mitchell Melton and Jaden Thomas, players like that who have experienced success. Right, Morris was on that TCU team that played for a national championship. Melton won a national title at Ohio State last year. Jaden Thomas was on the Notre Dame team that was the runner-up last season. How did those teams handle success? So to me, I think that's probably where you're going to have to get your veteran leadership from, and why it's ultra critical this week as UVA goes to Louisville. In terms of the matchup and some of the challenges that UVA will face, like you said, it's a good atmosphere. They care about football at Louisville. The game 2 years ago was a weeknight game, and the fans showed up. So I would expect more of the same on Saturday. Especially Louisville's probably feeling like it should be ranked, right? It's been the more steady program compared to UVA. I know Virginia has the better win against Florida State this year than any of Louisville's wins. But I'm sure Florida State's thinking that unbeaten. Why aren't we ranked?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so I think there's some of that. And then uh, Louisville on offense, they've not run the ball as well as it has the last couple of years, but that running back Isaac Brown's a heck of a player, and if he gets going, it could be a long day for Virginia's defense, which has had trouble against some of these top tier running backs that they've seen thus far, right? Hollywood Smothers at NC State had an absolute, career like day against the Hoos in week 2. Florida State rolled out a couple of different elite running backs, whether it was, Gavin Sawchuk or any of those 4 or 5 different backs that carried the ball for Florida State. So I think that's going to be one of the key things for Virginia. They're worried about the special teams aspect a bit. Colin Lacey, he's got 2 punt return touchdowns. That's a big issue, especially if Daniel Sparks, Virginia's punter, is still suffering from the hip flexor injury, and he's not able to punt. And then the offense, I just think the offense, it's about continuing to keep going and keep building on each week's success, because as good as Louisville has played on defense, and they can get after the quarterback a little bit, I don't know if there's a defense left on Virginia's schedule that'll have all the answers for all the different options that Chandler Morris has.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can you got to think to not get too confident, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I almost thought last week when I was looking at the schedule and, kind of previewing the FSU game that it could, could have been a look ahead game with their big matchup against Miami. Maybe they didn't take UVA as serious. And I'm almost a little worried that maybe the Cavaliers will get, too confident and all of a sudden, maybe take a team lightly, but you got to think because they've had so much struggles recently that maybe that's not their mindset. Maybe they still kind of have that chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, they're gonna have to, right? I mean, still, they're sitting, number 24 in the country, 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the league. There's still a lot of season left, right?
Hmm.
And one of the trickiest things about college football is not only, achieving and winning a game like they did Friday night, but staying consistent so that you can, get to a conference title game and can get, in a position to win 9, 10 games. That's some of the hard stuff, and that's why this week some of those older veterans are absolutely key. And I think for Virginia, because like you said, they've been so down the last couple of years, they've lost a lot of close games, even to Louisville, as I mentioned, right? Two fourth quarter late comebacks by the Cardinals to upend the Cavaliers. Like UVA should really have this game as one that irks them, right? Right, that irks them a little bit, and motivates them because of what happened the last couple of years, right? If they win that game last year and they're sitting at the same spot, they were 4-1 last year.
Yep.
Louisville comes to Charlottesville, and Louisville beats UVA on a touchdown with 1:55 to go. If UVA would have won that game, who knows what the rest of the season would have looked like for the Cavaliers. It was the start of a downward spiral. 3-game losing streak followed after that one, and they didn't reach bowl eligibility. They had another losing season. So this game should anger UVA a little bit, and they should be motivated by it.
Yeah, it's crazy to think the difference from the end of last year to now, just 6 weeks into the season or five, whatever it is. The difference. I mean, now they're ranked. Let's talk about that ranking a little bit. For our viewers' knowledge, Greg is an AP voter. I'm going to put you on blast here a little bit. I have your poll pulled up here. You have. Virginia ranked 21st. One voter had them as high as 15th. A handful had them unranked. They finished at 24th, which I think is a fair ranking, especially considering, the loss to NC State, but the massive win versus Florida State. I'm kind of curious to pick your brain a little bit about, how much time you spend on the poll. I know it's kind of been a big talk in the grand scheme
Yeah.
of college football in general. People have been talking about the AP voters and whatnot. What kind of goes through your process?
Man, I do spend quite a bit of time. I do all my beat work first, right? It's file a couple of stories after a game, and then it's dig in. I'm probably digging in between, I don't know, 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning on what's going on around the country. I've watched as much college football as I can typically, right?
Yeah.
Virginia had a 7 o'clock game Friday, so I was able to spend a lot of time Saturday. I watched Penn State, Oregon. I had earlier in the day LSU, Ole Miss. I watched some of the Louisville Pittsburgh game for obvious reasons. And typically on Saturdays, like if Virginia's playing at night, I'm able to see most of the noon games and then some of the 3:30 games. If they're playing early, I can watch the night games. I do think if you're a voter, you have a responsibility to watch as much as you possibly can consume,
Yeah.
and then also do your homework, right? Looking at different stats, national stats in terms of where teams are, total offense, total defense, who people have beaten. I always try to reward Nolan what happens on the field, because if you don't reward what happens on the field, then what's the point?
Yeah,
I mean,
but you're
it's not
20.
supposed
I,
to.
I love that you have Virginia over Florida State. I can't believe more folks didn't have it that way. They
I,
beat them.
I know Florida State beat Alabama, but the most recent result was
Yeah.
Virginia beat FSU. And then, Alabama got a bump in my ballot because they beat Georgia. Georgia fell a little bit. So that was a little tricky to figure out. But I think with what happened on Friday, you have to adjust. To me, like you look at some of the teams that I have near the top, they're the teams with the best wins, right? Oregon went to Penn State and won. Miami has beaten South Florida, Notre Dame, and Florida. Ohio State has its win over Texas. Ole Miss has 3 SEC wins already, plus they've beaten Tulane. Indiana pulverized Illinois. So to me, you've got to reward the teams that have actually accomplished something.
Yeah, and I know it's become popular for folks to complain about certain pollers. Have you had to deal with people online tweeting at you that your poll is horrible? How'd you do this week? Right now, you got one upvote, so around even. I feel like if ups and negatives. If you're around even, it's got to be a pretty fair ballot, I would imagine.
Yeah, every now and then I get emails of what is the thought process, and that's fine. It's part of the job. This week, somebody from Texas was pretty upset that I had the Longhorns down at 20, but they don't have a Power 4 win yet.
Yeah.
To me, like, beat somebody and then I can bump you up. They played Ohio State tough, but if you look at the resumes of the teams ahead of them, it's all better.
Yeah.
It's all better. So that to me is kind of my thought process. I've had coaches reach out and ask, the different schools across the country, guys I've covered before. I got an angry text from a head coach a couple of weeks ago, and that was interesting. But I understand. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all part of it. All part of it. So I enjoy it, and I do love covering college football. I cover football, basketball, baseball over at UVA, but I do enjoy covering college football the most. And if you enjoy it, you should be willing to do the work to do it when you're asked to take an AP
Yeah,
vote.
absolutely.
And
And I
that,
love the AP poll as well. I think
yeah,
it's so much fun. I think there's value to it, especially before, like, we don't need a playoff selection committee ranking teams week 1 through,
right.
5 or whatever. I love it. I love it's the opportunity to debate it and to call out somebody and to get a
Yeah.
text message. I think that's fun.
My whole thing with it, Nolan, and it's gotten a lot of scrutiny, right, this season so far.
Yeah.
To me, my problem is if you're a beat writer and you're asked to take a vote, if you know you can't handle the workload to take it, then don't take it. Like that's as simple as it gets to me.
Yeah.
Is like nobody's forcing you to do it. They ask if you want to do it. I used to have one for basketball, and I stepped away after a year. I was like, I couldn't stay up late and watch West Coast basketball games 3 nights a week. I couldn't follow every team in the country adequately, and I felt like I don't know who the top 25 teams are each week. So I turned in my vote. I'm like, I tried it one year. I tried my best. It didn't go as well. Football, I really feel like I have an idea of what's going on around the country. I talk to as many people as I can about teams. So I think that's as simple as it gets too. If you don't want to vote, don't take it.
I love it. Well, I appreciate your efforts to put together a good ballot each week, and I appreciate your time to come on the nightcap and preview this upcoming week with UVA and kind of recap the dramatics of last Friday night. If you could just give us a final, maybe quick little synopsis of this upcoming Saturday, and what do you think the Cavaliers need to do to come away with the win?
Yeah, I think on offense, it's keep it rolling. Chandler Morris, keep letting him distribute the football and take off to run when he can for the running game. Lean on Jamari Taylor and pick your spots with Xavier Brown and Harrison Whaley, and that formula should keep the offense moving pretty well. On defense, you got to watch the big play passes. They've given up some of those. They didn't have anybody who covered Deuce Robinson last week. So with Bell and Lacey for Louisville, that to me is a challenge, particularly if Brown gets going in the running game and Virginia's had its trouble. So I think this week's really going to challenge UVA's defense, especially coming off the Florida State game. And then on special teams, if you can't corral Colin Lacey, he's probably going to return a punt for a long gain. So that's kind of the three. If you look at offense, defense, special teams, that's the key for Virginia.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Greg, for stopping by. If any of our viewers want to hear more or follow along with what Greg's doing, it's at Greg Madia online, GregMadia. And of course, you can find his writings on the Daily Progress. Thanks so much for stopping by, Greg.
Thanks, Nolan. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Have a good one.